Good morning officially. Happy Thursday. So excited to be here with all of you. This is our first in a 5-week entourage of sessions focused on a really large umbrella of Canvas and all things related to grading and feedback. So everything from gradebook setup to different ways of thinking about giving feedback in an online environment. You name it, we're going to go there. So I'm so excited that all of you are here. Let me share my screen with you. Well, that screen isn't as exciting as, there we go. Can you all see that now? All right. Although those starfish were really pretty, weren't they? All right. I am Nicole Bryant Lescher. I'm English faculty at College of the Redwoods and a coordinator here at 3CSN. And I have been teaching and grading online for many years with a specific focus in Canvas for about the last, my kid is 4.5, so about 4.5 years. And so I'm so excited to be learning with you and helping you in the spaces that you are thinking about feedback and grading as it relates to Canvas. And I am joined by the amazing Keelan this morning. Keelan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Really happy to be here supporting Nick and all of you. And my role, well, first of all, I started actually teaching online in 2007. So it's been a long time. And I'm just really like always learning, as all of you are, because this is not the same thing, as we all know, right? And I am also, I teach English at Cal State Northridge. So I am here to support all of you in the chat, and Nick will be stopping periodically in order to keep her flow going. We all want to make sure that she's able to share the information, and then I will share with her as we go along. So without further ado, I'm going to mute myself and let Nick do her thing.
I can get this.
Thank you. So excited to have you all with us this morning. So what you should see on your screen is an image that is our Google document, and the chat seems to be missing from my vision at the moment, Keelan. So as long as you've got eyes on it, we're great. I'm just going to invite all of you to please click on that link that Keelan is putting into the chat. And when you do, it should help you to, yes, here you come. I can see you. Google will turn you into mythical anonymous creatures. Once you come into this Google document, I'd love for us to take a couple minutes to get ourselves oriented and to really center on some setting of intentions. What are we here for? What do we want to know? What do we already know? So that I can help design our time together in a way that's going to fit where you are, what you need, and build on your knowledge and expertise that we're bringing into the room as well. So if you could please, on the left, include your name and your college or colleges that you call home. And then one column to the right of your name is that column is asking for something that you know. So think about something you already know, either about Canvas gradebook setup itself, or about designing kind of overall approaches to grading. So whether that's in an online environment or not, something that you feel like you know or feels true for you about good practices for deciding how one's going to grade, or how one's going to assess points, or any of those things related to scoring student work, or having students move through a class. Anything you already know there. And then to the right of that, things that you want to know, questions, areas you want to learn more about. And you can choose a line that feels good to you and add right in there. And then to the far right is that question of permission to share. And so you don't have to answer that now, but before the end of the session, and I'll remind you to come back here and think about it, just see if you feel comfortable letting what you share in this Google document be ideas, comments that Keelan and I and others of us at 3CSN can use when we create communication out to all of you, to our network. So Keelan and I and some of our co-coordinators just finished making a brief, kind of a here's what we were up to, and here's what we learned, and here's what you all said, and here's what we learned based on what you said from our winter interim session. So all of those design labs that we did in January, we took all of that feedback that folks put into these Google documents and other ways of communicating. And that gives us a starting place for thinking about what we're learning, about what our network needs, what we need to do next, and really offers that back up to all of you to see where we're at, right? As a state, what we're learning. And so if that feels good to you, if that feels comfortable for you, by all means, you can put a Y or a yes. And if you're like, nah, I'd really just like the people within the session to see what's on here, we want to completely support and respect that as well. And so just an N or a no in that permission to share spot helps us to know that too. As you finish adding your ideas about what you know and what you want to know, I always like to take a moment to recognize the metacognitive elements of what we're doing as much as possible. I design these sessions so that they can share knowledge, but that they're also modeling different processes that you might find useful for engaging with your students in whatever capacity you are working with them and with your colleagues. And so a table like this, which we have different names for at 3CSN, but one of our favorites is a KWL plus, it's a graphic organizer that really helps learners set their intentions as they get started. So, and it gives learners an opportunity to share what they know, rather than assuming that learners are all starting from scratch, right? So it recognizes the expertise in the room without having to spend a lot of time to get there. You can do really quickly to kind of capture, what do we already know? How can we build from where we are? And then that what do I want to know is just such a great way for learners to name for themselves what feels really valuable. And it helps the facilitator to understand that too. So if you would please, either visually by watching your screen or scrolling your own Google document, our working document to page 5, I'd love to invite you toward our community agreements. And if you're thinking that there's more you want to say about what you know and what you want to know, no worries. This Google document remains available for you. And we're going to have continued moments throughout our time together today where you have the opportunity to reflect and sort of say for yourself the knowledge that you're gaining as you go. So we're going to continue that process moving forward. But before I get us any deeper into our work together, I want to take that moment for us to set some community agreements or norms with one another. This is just a great opportunity for us to name what feels valuable about learning with each other and how we want that learning to go. And so what you're going to see on page 5 is a number of community agreements or norms that have generated, it's over a year now, Keelan. I have to say, over the past year plus of us working together in these wayfinding sessions. And so many of these community agreements or ways of being together have come from our participants, from all of you. And so I'm going to take a moment to say those aloud, just to give you an opportunity to be mindful and hear them as well as see them. And then I'm going to invite us as a group, if there's anything that's missing, things we can make better, clearer, fortify with more vitamin D, whatever it might be, let's add those. There's room at the bottom. This list should really be a reflection of who we are as a group and fit our needs. So some of the golden shining community agreements that we've come to share with our participants over the last year include the following. As much as possible while we're learning together, let's keep in mind that we are all learners and that we're doing our best. This is particularly relevant when we're talking about grading and assessment. Those are areas that can be fraught with self-consciousness, outside judgment from peers, from inside judgment from self, departmental stuff. It's just a zoo. It's a zoo of noise. And so I just really want to invite you into giving yourself permission to be in that learner role. Know that you're doing your best, and that if you learn something while you're here, and that ultimately makes you want to do something differently, that's a gain, right? It's not a place of saying, oh, geez, well, why did I make X, Y, or Z choice for A, B, or C years, right? It's a process. We're always in process. As Keelan has already mentioned, the chat function is a designated place to reach out for individual help. If or when something isn't working for you on Zoom, if you experience technological difficulties, please let us know right away so we can help. That's what we're here for. Let's approach teaching, learning, and student support with a growth mindset. So as much as possible, as we're looking into grading, which can be an area that feels really tender, it's not something that's talked about a lot on campuses. And so because we don't talk about it a lot, we might not have as much stamina or muscle memory for having those conversations, right? So let's just approach those with a growth mindset. We're here to learn. We can expand and become more flexible, especially when we have the support of one another to work with. Let's start from a place of belief in student capacity and success. So when we're designing our elements and when we're thinking about what's possible, let's anchor that thinking in a belief of student capacity and success. A reminder that it is super helpful to ask questions and to say if something is confusing. We're very good about saying this to our students. We're not always good about believing this ourselves. And so just again, that invitation. If something I say is confusing, if an idea comes in and then gets stuck in the gears, you can hear them grinding and you're like, wait a minute, I need another way of thinking about that or more time. Please reach out. If you need that, probably everybody needs that. If you have a question, probably everybody has that question or a similar question that can branch. And that's how we learn together. Everybody should have the opportunity to share, right? It's really important that we equitize our space as much as possible. And so using discussion protocols or ways of sharing that give everyone room can very much help with that. And we'll be modeling some of those within our time together. A reminder that it's okay to try something and change your mind. Especially when we're online, it can feel like all effort needs to result in a perfect product. It's a lot of pressure on ourselves. As much as possible, let's try and remember that prototyping takes time and practice. I try and lean into all of the lessons I can learn from my small person at home who tries stuff and changes his mind all the time. Lots of scraped knees, right? Lots of learning. A little time for processing and reflection before moving on makes a big difference. So if my brain's already on something else and your brain needs another minute, please reach out in the chat and be like, wait, hang on, right? And we'll take that time to pause. And our last session added a new one, which is let's encourage those conversations and practices. Our last series of 5 that I did with this. We had a participant that said, let's encourage those conversations and practices that lead to more equitable grading, even if that can feel new, potentially uncomfortable. Let's help each other. Let's help each other get there. And we'll just take it one step at a time. So what can you all add? What feels worthwhile, useful, important to add to this list to make it better or more richly serve all of us today? If there's anything that you're thinking of, or a practice that you've seen in either one of our sessions or in another session that you've gone to, and you're like, that worked really well, you can add it to the chat, and Keelan will let me know, or you can add it right as a bullet, right on the sheet, whatever feels good for you. It's all right. If this feels pretty comprehensive at the moment, I would encourage you to just know that it's a living document, right? So as we work together more, you might decide that there's a thing that we should add to our list that'll make our our ways of working with each other richer, or just something we're doing that isn't named here and you really like it. That happens too. So know that you can always pop something in the chat or invite us back to this page and we can add to this. I'm going to scroll us to page 6 of the Google document. Feel comfortable to watch on your screen here. Scroll with me on your Google document if you want, whatever feels good for you. As I build these sessions, I'm always doing my best to try and make sure that I'm designing what we do together in a backwards design method, right? So I'm thinking about those inquiry questions, sort of where do I want to go and where my goals are, and then designing backwards from there. And so some of my guiding questions for making this session are on your screen now on page 6. And so they go from being really tech focused to being more theoretical in their frame. And so some of these questions may resonate more with you than others, just kind of depends on where you are in your process. So first big question, what are the options and necessary steps for organizing and using my gradebook online in Canvas? So if I'm going to use that Canvas gradebook, what do I need to do? What choices do I have? And how do I click all of the boxes to make what I want to do happen? And can I click all the boxes to make what I want to do happen? So, what's that relationship between my design and how Canvas is laid out? Question 2, what do my students see when they look at their grades in the Canvas gradebook? How does what they see impact their experience learners and influence their next steps? So not just how do they access their grades, but what's the relationship between the choices, the design choices I'm making, and how my students experience being graded in this class? What's that relationship look like? And how can I make design choices that are going to positively influence their next steps and, really help move them to continue to try and persist and to strengthen? And last, how can I examine the connections between my gradebook design and student equity and success? If I'm curious about changing some element of my grading design, where do I start? And I feel like these two questions go together, right? If I start really thinking about that relationship between the design of my gradebook or my feedback and equity and success for students, oftentimes it's like, okay, I could do 40 things, but 40 feels like a whole lot. So like, how does one start with one thing and then layer to a second or a third, without it feeling really out of hand and chaotic? So those are going to be our guiding questions for today. And before I start modeling anything, I would love for you to find something and read something that resonates for you on where you are in your own process of having questions about Canvas, grading, gradebook setup, etc. So I'm just going to take a moment to tell you a little bit about what you'll see on page 7 and page 8. So each week that I do one of these sessions, there's going to be, it started as resources and now it's kind of like a library. There's a lot here. We have lots of participants to thank for adding things to our resource guides, but it's organized into different types of resources. So on the left-hand side, there are several readings that kind of look at the theory of grading, right? So they're more abstract in their frame. They're really thinking about those big picture questions, like what's the relationship between how I design my grading and how students learn. And so there's a number of foundational readings here. And then if these look familiar to you, you've engaged with some of these already, there's also some next step readings, right? So starting here, if this is maybe one of your first readings about gradebook design, student learning, grading for equity. And then if you've got some familiarity here, here's some next step options down below. And then the right-hand side of this table is more how-to guides, right? So these are, instead of theory, think about these as practice. And so there's a number of different how-to guides from Canvas, right? And then, how to do this, how to do that. And then there's a few things that I've popped in there for you as well. So about halfway down, there's a guide that I make that you can give to your students to help them access grades and feedback. So it gives you an opportunity to think about what students see, or more accurately don't see when they're looking at their grade book, and how to help them with that. And then some additional how-tos that can be helpful depending upon what you're looking to do. So what I would invite you to do is to choose something or a couple somethings that feel great and take about 8 minutes to read something. We're just going to spend some time building some knowledge together at the beginning. It is okay to read one or more things that are completely different from what somebody else reads. It is okay to read part of it, start halfway through, skim it and pick something else. There's no completion agenda. There's no test at the end. It's just a chance for you to find something that connects with some of those initial things you put in the chart, right? What do you want to know? And to give you some independent choice in finding that. You may keep your camera off while you're reading, but I just love for you to have that time, give something a look, and we'll come back together in a little less than 8 minutes. Enjoy your reading. Every time I read it. Okay. So where we're going to go next, Keelan, did you have a chance to give something a look? We had a busy couple minutes there. I thought if we wanted to, we could add things from our reading, or we could go into a little bit of modeling in Canvas. What feels good for you two? Nasreen, what feels good for you?
Yes, a little modeling on canvas would be good.
That sounds great. Okay, well, let's make our way there.
That. I second that.
Sounds great. Okay, so let me take us to Canvas. And this is, Nasreen, this is my Canvas sandbox. So it's not a real, right, there aren't students in this course, so we can do all sorts of things with it and not worry about it messing up anyone's lives, which is useful for practicing. And so if I were just coming into this Canvas course, and I was at my home page, in order to make some design choices about my gradebook setup, where I'd want to go is down to assignments. And so that's that third tab down, and I would click on that. And so even though it's completely understandable to think that gradebook decisions would happen in the grades page. The grades page is for when I take action on student submissions, right? So when students have completed something, a quiz or a discussion or submitted an assignment, I'll take action on those on the grades page. But if I want to alter the particular design of my gradebook, then I'm going to do that through this assignments tab. And so once I come into this assignments tab, if I've already built some assignments for my class, I'm just going to see all of those sort of scrolling down. And the most basic gradebook I can build in Canvas is the one that Canvas defaults to giving me. And so imagine that what you're seeing on this page, and it kind of looks like it, right? It's rectangular in nature. Imagine that Canvas just gives you a big bucket or a big bin, right? Some big rectangular space, and all of your assignments are placed in there. So whether you make 2 assignments or 200 assignments, they all go into one bin that Canvas gives you, originally just called assignments. And everything in that bin carries the same weight in terms of the gradebook. What makes a difference on how much impact an individual assignment has in the default Canvas gradebook is how many points it's worth, right? So if I just have one big assignment bin, an assignment here, like this Math Lab week 1, that's worth 100 points, is going to have a more significant impact on my student's final grade than this test student example assignment that's worth 25 points. So one big bin, everything goes in it, no matter how many assignments I have. And the way that I make an assignment more impactful or in other words, more critical to a student's grade, right? A more significant choice should they choose to do it or not do it, etc., is the amount of points that I make it out of. So that's the gradebook that Canvas defaults to. And for a lot of folks, that works really well. You know, there are lots of folks who design their classes out of 100 points or out of 1,000 points, and they're using that. Even though Canvas is going to do that math, they've got that past practice of really working out of a really evenly divisible bin. Everything goes in it, etc. But let's say that that design doesn't fit exactly where I want to go. I want something slightly more complex than that. Or let's say that in my syllabus, I have let my students know that I have different categories for my assignments. So what I can do is if I want more than one big bin, I can make additional bins. And this is really just an organizational piece at the start. So the smallest change I can make from Canvas's default is to create what Canvas calls groups. And so a group is just like, it's like taking one big bin and putting some dividers in it, right? So let's say in addition to assignments, I want to make a group called discussions. In order to do that, I can just go to plus group right here to the left, can title it, and then I can choose save. And that bin is going to show up right down here at the bottom. So because I've modeled this a few times in this class, right, this is the original bin that Canvas has given me. And at this point, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 additional bins or additional dividers. When I make a group, all that I'm telling Canvas is that I want a way to organize my assignments. And I want my students to, maybe I want it to reflect what my syllabus says. So I can then, once I've made these bins, on the left, grab an assignment that I've made and drag it from one bin to the next. Or when I go to create an assignment, and I'm editing that assignment, I'm putting it together, right? I'm explaining it, I've got my prompt, etc. When I come down here under options, I'm going to see this underneath how I decide how the grade is displayed. I'm going to see this choice where it says assignment group. And then if I've made more than just that default bin, if I've created those dividers, I can hit the drop-down menu and I can place anything new I create in whatever spot I want it to go, right? So maybe I want this to be in session 1 assignments or in quizzes, etc. So Canvas gives me 2 ways to do the same thing, which is that I can either, on my assignments page, once I've created my groups, move things around, or I can, while I'm building it, tell it which divided space within the bin I want it to go to. So when I make groups and I put stuff in groups, at the end of the day, the math is still like one big bin, right? The stuff in the session 2 bin carries the same weight as the stuff in the session 1 bin. It's just all about the points, right? So this 100-point thing in session 2 is going to have more impact on the final grade than the 15-point thing. But this 350-point assignment in the session 1 is going to have more impact than this 100-point, because the comparisons are still between groups, right? Everything is still mathematically carrying the same weight. The amount of points makes the difference on how much it impacts the final grade. So just to recap, step 1, Canvas's default, you get 1 bin. The amount of points that you give something determines how much impact things in the bin have. Step 2, slightly more complicated. You can choose the plus group and make different groups within this larger bin as a way to separate, organize, and divide. Still working off that same principle that the more points something is worth, the more impact it's going to have on the final grade. But some instructors say, well, I want something that allows me to create ceilings, right? So maybe I have 3 major assignments in my class, but I have 20 quizzes. And I don't want to make those quizzes worth just 1 point or something like that. But I also don't want the fact that I have 20 quizzes to mean that the majority of the final grade is those quizzes. I want the majority of the final grade to be those big projects. So how do I do that? And Canvas says, well, the way that you would do that is to make different groups, right? Make different categories or bins, but then weight them. And weighting them essentially creates a ceiling. So what you're telling Canvas is this bin, however many assignments are in it, impacts the final grade by X percentage. No more, no less. So you are able to uncouple the points and the total amount of assignments from the impact on the final grade. So I'm going to take a moment to model that and then pause so we can pick up questions because this is a bit more complicated. So if I've made some groups, I've got a bunch of them here, and I decide that I do want to create those ceilings. I want to create those specific roles that each of these categories or bins or groups is going to play in my gradebook. The way that I would do that is to go over to the right, 3 dots, click on that, and say assignment groups weight. That's that second choice. If I click on assignment groups weight, it gives me this pop-up, and this pop-up's really important. It's like, wait, hang on, are you sure this is what you want? And it's saying, hey, do you want to weight the final grade based on the assignment groups? And if I say yes, and I click that, then it gives me all my assignment groups. At the bottom, it gives me this 0%. And as I add percentages in here, the goal is that the total amount of weight each group has comes together to make 100%. So if my session 1 assignments are the most important thing in my class, like this is, these are the summative assignments, this is where students are demonstrating their knowledge and skills, I'm going to maybe put that at 60%. In my class, it's worth 95%, right? So the big projects that they do is almost the entirety of the grade. And then let's say maybe their homework, they're going to have a lot of homework assignments, but they're really just practice assignments. I don't want them to have a huge impact on the final grade in case students struggle with one of them. So let's say maybe I make those worth 10%. Maybe quizzes are mid-range, right? Students have had some practice with homework. It's not the big projects yet, but those quizzes are those midpoint checks maybe. So I want these to be worth a little bit more. So maybe I make these worth 25%. I'm going to check my math as we go. Okay, we got 5% to go. So then maybe I say, okay, well, we'll do discussions in class as well. I'll make those worth 5%. So I can come in and I can adjust these. In a normal situation, a designer or faculty member is probably not going to have categories worth 0%. The total amount of categories they have, each of those will probably have a percentage, although you can. And the benefit to having a category with 0% is that you can still make them graded assignments. You can give a score, but they won't impact the student's final grade. And that can be quite valuable. It can be useful to have that option where students are engaging with something, you're giving them feedback, it shows up in the grade book, it shows up on their calendar, but it isn't impacting their final grade. So once I've put in some numbers, I'm going to choose save. And then I'll know that the choices I've made have impacted. If I see a little bubble to the right of the name of my group with the percentage, that helps me check to remember, okay, what's the total impact? Meaning that no matter how many assignments I have, how many, how few, no matter how many points they're worth, how many, how few, 60% of the final grade of this class is going to be determined by student performance on whatever is in this particular group. So the more points something is worth in this group still means it carries more value, right? More impact compared to other things within this group. But as soon as I've set up these percentages, these weighted categories, the comparisons are within the group rather than assuming there's one big bin where everything has to be valued. That's a lot of explaining. I'm going to pause for a minute.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick. So I have, I really think that the 0% is a incredible. So this is something new that I've learned that I'm going to be able to share with my faculty. And yes, the, percentage, the weight thing is a lifesaver. So
Totally.
yeah. Um,
Totally.
so now when you hide a quiz that you're
Uh-huh.
not going to use that for some, like say for example the portfolio submission,
Yeah, yeah.
so that will not, the students will not get to see that on the grade book, will they?
They won't. So there's a couple different meanings behind something being hidden. And so just to give a clarification of terms, depending upon how somebody might be using that question or asking that question. So if this green check mark isn't here, right? If it's got the slash instead, that means it's unpublished, which
Yeah,
means I can see it as the designer, but nobody can see it at all,
but is it
right?
calculated?
So not only will it, like, it won't show up in the grade book because, and it won't show up in a module. Like, even if I were to attach this in a module and ask students to do it, they wouldn't be able to access it because it hasn't been published.
But will it impact the grade?
It will not.
Okay,
Nope.
that
Nope.
was my question. Okay.
Absolutely. And so in my working classes, like in my classes that have actual students in them, for my own sanity, I have a category
Mhm,
that I make worth 0%,
mhm,
that I name, or a group, excuse me, that I name unpublished assignments.
mhm,
And so that way, if, like, for example, last spring when I had to alter my course in response to COVID, there was a number of things I didn't do that semester that I would typically do. And so instead of eliminating those or removing those assignments completely from my course, I just made a separate group, called it unpublished assignments, and moved all that stuff in there. So
yes, yes,
it's like
because
cleaning your closet, right? It helps the stuff stay in one spot or whatever. And so that seemed helpful.
okay, wonderful. So that, and the another question I had, it was a burning question. And now it's um, so this hiding of the grade is one, and oh, what with Canvas is that if you go to the grades, and I just wanted to where when everything. Yeah. So I am, what I'm having difficulty with is that um, the grades are the way the grade book is set up in Canvas. Uh, the um, the calculation is based on only what they have submitted. So students
Mhm.
get to see that, oh, they have 100% and
Yes.
from the very beginning, or 90%. So as we go along, and then they don't submit their work, so you have to make it like things that are past due, not submitted, will be zero.
Uh-huh.
So that's something that I would like to you to show me that how does that that, just one second, let me just I just want to see my own
You
otherwise
bet.
it's
You
not
bet.
just does not jog my
Take your time.
just to be per, to to let you know what I exactly am looking for. So so my student um, has missing assignments,
Mhm.
but still has. So when in the grade book the student sees it's like 90%, whereas the
Mhm.
student does have missing assignment. They unless they go and unclick the calculate based only on graded assignment, then they will get to see that. But most students don't know that, and so then I have to set it up to make the um, missing assignment to be as so that part is something that I especially with the
Sure.
previous grade book it was fine, I was able to but with the after the change to the to upgrade it to the another version of the grade book, it's not as user friendly for me to be able to, then I have to go and put, so when I go and change anything, um, make changes, that then it just like impacts, it doesn't, anyway, I'm not doing something right when it
So
comes.
let me, can I just take a look and make, I just want to go through a checklist of things with you to make sure that these are things that you do, and we'll just troubleshoot to see if we can
Yeah,
see if there's a way to smooth it.
yeah,
So let's say that this assignment was due and this test student didn't complete it.
yeah.
I think you are probably already putting in
Zero.
a non-submission score
Yeah,
for them.
yeah,
So whether that's a 0 or like in my class,
yeah.
it's a 1, I have a floor so that they're not, getting an F minus. They're just getting an F from a non-submission. But whatever that is, that you're entering a score here, right? It's not staying as a dash once.
Sometimes, I don't remember, how it is, and that the student is misled. And this has happened to other classes also, for other faculty, and there was a huge issue that the student has a complaint to the dean
Sure.
that you know uh,
And is
by the
that with a quiz? Is that typically with a quiz? Because I'm thinking about when, or is it just like I forgot to go back and check those, or because it's harder with a quiz, right? If they don't take a quiz and the quiz is auto grading,
yeah,
it is super
yeah,
easy
yeah,
to forget those.
that yes, that is there. And also with assignments, the even if it is manually graded, the instructor goes and grades all the ones who have submitted, and sometimes they forget about the non-submission,
Totally.
so it stays blank, so then the student is misled. So
Well, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
I mean, the student
absolutely.
can claim that how come I saw my grade to be this, and how come, and so I've had, you know, so there is an option there is an in Canvas where you can say that non-submission um,
Hmm.
is counted as 0 or something like that, which in the previous version of Gradebook it was very clear cut, simple, but in this new ever since the new version came, I have I cannot just do the blanketed one that
Right.
if it selects something and everything is like I don't seem to be able to be successful in that. So where was, I mean, there it was somewhere that I did make those.
So I can, that isn't a function I use. I'm absolutely happy to look with it. Might I suggest a few manual options first
Yes,
and
please
at
do.
least add those to your list, and then we can look for, and I say that only because um, I think it's challenging for faculty and students
Mhm.
if Canvas is driving the gradebook.
Yeah,
If Canvas is the one that decides whether a student knows how they're doing,
yeah.
I worry that that's a missed opportunity for a conversation between the instructor and the student that could be really transformative for both, that
Uh-huh.
would probably happen in a face-to-face environment, right? And so it's just a place where I worry a little bit. Sorry, there's a lawnmower outside in my office
Yeah, I
area.
know. I just,
Um, I
I
worry
had the same thing.
a little bit that like if we were in a face-to-face class and a student didn't submit something,
Mhm.
or a student sat in class and my goodness, let me put on some earphones for you all. My apologies.
No, no worries. Don't worry. I don't hear it as loud as
For me here on campus, and that is a very, very loud lawnmower. One moment. Let's make this better for you. Be better now. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Does it sound less like a lawnmower is going on?
The lawnmower, I didn't hear it
I
as
do
loud
not
as
hear the lawnmower at all,
you.
period.
No, we didn't hear the.
I didn't hear it before.
Well, although sometimes I do wonder if there's voices in my head, there is a legitimate lawnmower outside.
No,
And
no.
I'm glad none of us can
No,
hear
I'm totally certain that it was bugging you, which
Well,
means
it
that
was.
it's better to put the headphones on.
Totally. Now I also feel like an air traffic controller because of this little situation over here. Okay. So, yeah. So anyway, even if Canvas found a magic way to know exactly how we would want non-submissions to be treated, which I think we can set up with a rule. I think it's under the rules and
Oh yeah, I got it. It's where that little wheel is on the rightmost corner
uh-huh. Yep, right here.
top. This is something that I need to um, understand from you. If you could.
Yep. So you could put in here. So under late policies, which is not a particularly accurate tab, but whatever. Here it is. Thanks, Canvas, for your language. You can put automatically apply grade for missing submissions, and then adjust this to the total percentage that those students that you would want those students to receive for that submission. And so, many folks, the answer would be if you don't submit, it's a 0. I do think that there's more and more conversation about the impacts of 0 on students and the opportunity to. Oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
So when I did that, it was like, students were totally confused, and it messed up the gradings, the percentage and everything. Um, when I put a 0%, so those missing grade to 0%, it has the calculation does not come out. It comes out very weird.
That I cannot speak to.
Okay. Okay.
I wish I could.
So what would you recommend if we use this?
So what I do is that when I go through quiz, discussion, whatever, I come to this page and I look at my student submissions. So instead of going to SpeedGrader alone and I'll go to SpeedGrader, right? I'll come in, I'll see my student submissions. I'll go to SpeedGrader here.
Mm-hmm.
And SpeedGrader is going to default to grading whatever the first person who submitted is.
Yeah.
But my step after that is to go to go back to the gradebook over here on the left to look at the grades. And again, this is, an imperfect example because I don't have, my standard amount of students in my sandbox, but imagine this is full all the way through. So I finished in SpeedGrader, but then I'm going to come through and I'm going to go and manually add a 0, or in my case, I add an F, right, a 59% to any missing submission. And that's going to give me the opportunity to do two things. One, it's going to give me the opportunity to send a message to those students because SpeedGrader is going to skip over them. And a score is not the same thing as feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it would allow me to go in and to message that student.
Yeah.
And say, I noticed you didn't submit. What can we do? How can I help? Do you want to meet?
Yeah.
And I could use the same message, for all of them. Like it's something I could type up, brief, and then put it in my comment and copy and paste it for each of them. But just something to note. And then
go ahead. Missing, or you could use that missing assignment, and then that would go to all of them, right? Those who
yes, I could email those who are missing an assignment. Yep, and it would go to all of them. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, these are best practices, definitely. But my question was with how, if anybody wants to use that gear button there that Canvas has, do you, what would you recommend how to use that?
Let me see if on our guides here, I have one already in here that, let me see if, let me just look over here and see if one of these Canvas Hive 2 guides that's already in here works with rules. Because these are recent guides that I've added. And so let's see.
Because I remember in the previous version, it was more simpler, clear cut. It didn't mess up the grade book. But when I tried, then that's why, you know, I shy away from using that or introducing that to my faculty. But there are faculty who would like to just have, you know, set it up so that it
Mm-hmm.
automatically does the thing, and the student
Sure.
immediately see their exact grade that they're getting. Because there has been incidents where faculty, you know, deans got the complaint and things like that. So these are things that I would like to avoid, so that faculty don't fall into this kind of problem.
Sure.
Now, Zarina, it
Let's,
sounds like it would be great to have your colleagues also come to these gradebook sessions with you, maybe.
Yeah, I try and you know, advertise your 3CS, and I've been doing that ever since COVID. So they do. Some of them are regular. Some of them do come. Yeah,
That's very
I
good.
try to. Yeah, I mean,
It'd just be cool considering right now we just have you. It'd be cool if your team was with you.
I know.
absolutely. And it's hard to be the ambassador to ideas when you're trying to do that all on your lonesome. That is challenging.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm just pulling up different things in this guide here. So message students who fit within a criteria, set default grade. I'm just going to pull both of these open. Okay. Let's just, okay. So I pulled up a couple more specific guides. How do I apply a missing submission policy to Gradebook? So Nasreem, I think this is what we looked at. What I would suggest, and I can put this this link in the chat because I got to it through one that's on our Google Doc, but this one itself is not. So let me add that on. My chat is hiding on me today, so just one moment. There it comes.
Sharing, it's
There it goes. Okay. And then I'll share my screen again. So what I would encourage is for you to take a look, and also for your faculty to take a look at this huge series of notes on this Canvas guide. My experience has been that when Canvas puts out a guide and there's a series of notes this long, it means it's complicated. And my hope is that secretly one day it means it will be better.
yeah.
Because the longer the notes list, the more caveats there are to how the thing is
Yeah,
working,
no,
right?
that's the part that I feel I miss in the previous version of the grade book. It was much simpler.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that would solve that problem. But ever since this new one, I I, I when I experienced it myself, and then so I stopped promoting that to the faculty. I just tell them that, you know, doing it manually, doing it, but not all everybody. I can
Right.
reach everyone, so as many, but there are there, you know, those who have experienced the recent incident with the dean getting the complaint from the student is when I, you know, I have to take it more seriously, that this this kind of situation can happen more and more.
Totally. And it's an imperfect system at best. Again, if Canvas is that communication bridge, right? Because the gradebook defaults to one of two. options, and neither is great mid-semester, right? Either the Canvas gradebook defaults to your score is only out of what you've done, which can give a false sense
Exactly.
of success, or you start in a hole you have to climb yourself out of the entire semester,
Like
which is a false sense of doom.
yeah.
Neither is perfect.
No, like you said that you don't want the grade book to drive your grades. It's the instructor, but not all instructors are the same.
Totally.
Some of them just want to just put it in that auto mode, and and then I don't even blame those who have large classes with 7 courses to teach. It's not that humanly possible unless and until they get a TA or somebody to help them out. So, but yeah, so this is great. I'm gonna look at that. And so we do have a repository where we give training every Friday. It's a show and tell with facts. So we bring up all these little things and then we put it up in that Canvas environment for faculty to go back and see that. So this would be a great resource for them. I could share and talk about it.
Totally. And as I look at this, like, I mean, if they've got a mathematical equation as their example, again, my hunch is this is a complex system that Canvas has set up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
for
Canvas's gradebook has never been an exciting one, but
no.
you just have to work with it.
So the other guide I would suggest for you as a resource and to give as a resource to your faculty is under these how-to guides. This one that says Nicole's Guide for Students to Help Them Access Their Grades and Feedback. So part of in my experience that disconnect where students end up complaining is that Canvas also makes it really hard for students to know what their grade is and why they got it. Right.
Yeah.
And so this is just a please take it and use it. And so you can just share it with your faculty. It's a Google Doc. You can just share it. You can download it and give it to your faculty. Your faculty can literally put it in their Canvas course.
And then we will put it in our and give your name is there and everything is there so we can say where.
Absolutely. But it less important than me getting any credit is it's that faculty understand how awful the gradebook looks on the student side, which I think is so easy to not know that. It's really hard to know how bad it is because it looks pretty good on our end.
Yeah.
And then this is for students. I mean, faculty will learn a lot by reading this, but this is literally to give directly to the students so that the students know step by step with images
Fantastic.
how to go in, how to click on stuff, how to see their feedback, what those different kinds of feedback look like, etc.
Okay.
And so please feel free to just take that and send it out into the world however it's useful. I find it a more student-friendly guide than like the one right above it is the one Canvas makes.
We have to have more of the student-facing, and we in fact we're just putting together a student for student Canvas training sessions. So
wonderful.
This could be one of them. So Nick, I appreciate it so very much, and Keelan, thank you so much for this opportunity. I have to jump to another meeting. But I've learned so much. This is, I mean, the gradebook has been something that faculty has always had issues with.
Yes.
So the more and like as you said, the students as well. And now you've given me something that is student facing. That is wonderful.
I'm so glad we could be of help, Nasreen. I'm so glad. And let us know how that Canvas how-to guide works with all of those bullets. Maybe there's a trick to it and it figures out and it really helps make things easier on the other end.
Absolutely. I will let you guys know.
And next week's topic will be the feedback features.
Okay.
So please spread the word and let us know if you need any information or anything in the meantime. But yeah, we are looking forward to hearing about how that goes. And I learned some things today too, as I always do. Oh my goodness.
Yes, yes, that's thank you.
Here.
Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
Okay. Bye bye.